Ever run into someone who, like, the more obstacles they hit, the more they just dig in their heels? Like that never give up attitude,
Hmm.
but it's gone kind of sideways.
You hit it right on the head. It's that fine line, isn't it? When does determination become, well, just plain stubbornness?
Totally. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, right? To this article, The Right Kind of Stubborn. It's less about give up or go home and more about knowing how to steer.
That's a great way to put it. The article really digs into that difference, the kind of persistence that leads to breakthroughs versus the kind that keeps someone spinning their wheels.
All right, so less spinning, more breakthroughs. I like the sound of that. What's the secret sauce? How does this article tell them apart?
Well, they use this analogy of a boat. Imagine two boats, both powerful, both determined to reach a certain destination. Now, the first boat, that's your truly persistent person. They're constantly adjusting, using the rudder, navigating the currents, even changing tactics if the wind shifts.
Okay, so it's not just about brute force. It's about being smart, adaptable.
Hmm.
What about that second boat, the stubborn one?
Ah, that one. All engine, no steering. They might feel like they're making progress because, hey, the engine's roaring, but without that ability to adapt, to course correct, they're going to end up run aground.
Ouch. And I'm guessing in real life that running aground is anything from a blown deadline to like a whole project imploding.
Exactly. And what the article highlights is that a lot of it boils down to where someone gets stuck in the decision-making process. Like, think of it as a decision tree with all these branches of possibilities.
Okay, I'm picturing a big oak tree, branches going everywhere.
Perfect. Now, the obstinate personality. They get fixated on one of those early branches, their initial idea, and they won't budge. The persistent mind, they're exploring those branches, reassessing, changing course as they learn.
It's that line from the article, right? The persistents are attached to the goal. The obstinate are attached to their ideas about how to reach it. So it's not even being stubborn about everything, is knowing where to focus that stubbornness.
Right on. And what's fascinating is the article, it starts by suggesting maybe this obstinacy comes from feeling overwhelmed. Like
Yeah.
when we're over our heads, we cling to what's familiar.
Makes sense. If you're freaking out, you fall back on your old habits, even if they're bad habits. But then the article throws a curveball.
It does. It brings up those Collison brothers, the super successful entrepreneurs, right? You'd think the harder the problem, the more likely someone would be to get entrenched, to dig in their heels.
100%. I know I do that. The more pressure, the more I cling to my first idea, even if it's terrible.
But the Collisons, according to the article, they actually become more open, more flexible, the tougher the challenge gets. So it suggests obstinacy isn't just about feeling overwhelmed, it's deeper than that.
So what's the verdict? If it's not just pressure, why do some people get so stuck?
The article's point, obstinacy is less about what's happening to us and more like an internal reflex, a resistance to changing our minds.
Okay, so if we're wired to resist changing our minds, is there ever a good time to be stubborn? Or are we doomed to just keep repeating the same mistakes?
Well, that's where things get interesting. The article actually argues that a little bit of obstinacy in the right doses can be a good thing. Think of it like that initial burst of "I'm gonna prove you wrong" energy.
I can see that. Like when you start a huge project and you hit those first few roadblocks, you kind of need that "I will conquer this thing" attitude just to get off the ground.
Exactly. And the article takes it even a step further, linking it to, believe it or not, our biology.
Yeah.
That primal fight or flight response we all have. Well, sometimes when we face a challenge, that stubborn streak kicks in and it gives us that extra push to power through.
So it's like we're hardwired for it, but it's about using it productively.
Yeah,
Like use that initial burst to build momentum, but don't be afraid to change gears when you need to.
you got it. It's about harnessing that energy, but not letting it control us. And that leads us to what the article calls the real heart of the matter, the 5 elements of true productive persistence.
All right, hit me with it. What's the secret formula? I'm ready to trade in my stubborn streak for some of that good stuff.
Well, if I told you it was a simple recipe, I'd be lying. One thing the article makes clear: anyone can be obstinate.
Mhm.
Just ask a parent who's dealing with a toddler who wants what they want. NOW.
Oh, tell me about it. The tantrums, the tears, the flat-out refusal to accept that, no, the cookie jar is not refilling itself. I've been there.
Exactly. But the real deal, the kind of persistence that gets results, the article says it boils down to these 5 elements: knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them, as they say.
Okay, I'm all in. Let's deal me in what are these 5 pillars of persistence?
Well, the first one the article talks about is energy. And it's not just about clocking in longer hours, it's more about consistent effort. Showing up day after day, even when you'd rather not.
So like that early morning workout routine. You'd rather hit snooze, but you drag yourself out of bed and get it done. It's about discipline.
Absolutely. Then there's imagination. Because let's be real, real persistence needs flexibility. Being able to come up with new solutions, think outside the box, all that.
So instead of forcing that square peg in the round hole, it's like, maybe I need a different peg or a different hole.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's resilience. Because no matter how persistent you are, you're going to hit roadblocks, disappointments, even straight up failures.
This one is so key because it's so easy to just throw in the towel when things get tough.
Yeah.
But resilience is about bouncing back, right? Dust yourself off, figure out what went wrong, and come back stronger.
Exactly. That's it. That ability to turn those failures into learning experiences, to see setbacks as just temporary detours.
Okay, so we've got energy, imagination, resilience.
Yeah.
What are the last two? What pushes someone from just plain stubborn to truly persistent?
Well, this next one might surprise you. Good judgment.
Judgment. I wouldn't have thought of that, but it makes sense. I mean, you could have all the energy and resilience of the world, but if you're applying it to a sinking ship, it's not going to end well.
That's it. Good judgment is about being honest with yourself. Is this strategy working, or am I just banging my head against a wall? Knowing when to stick with it and when to cut your losses.
So not just blindly never giving up. It's about choosing your battles. I like it. What's the final ingredient?
This one ties everything together. A clear focus on the goal. That North Star that guides your efforts, even if your tactics have to change along the way.
It's like that saying, it's not the destination, it's the journey, except you got to make sure you actually have a destination in mind first.
Exactly. And having that clear objective, that's what allows for the flexibility and the adaptability we've been talking about. You might have to take a detour, find a new route, but that ultimate goal, that keeps you motivated.
Right, like the journey is all about, trying new things, being open to change, but
Mhm.
you got to have that end goal in sight, or you're just wandering around.
Exactly. It's that destination that lets you be flexible, adaptable. Like maybe you plan this whole road trip and then there's a storm, you got to find a different route, but you still know where you're headed. That's the important part.
Makes sense. So it's not about being stubborn just for the sake of it. It's about like being smart about it.
Yeah.
Having that energy, that imagination, that good judgment, it all works together.
100%. And that's what the article really drives home. Anyone can just dig in their heels and refuse to budge. We see it all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
But this real persistence, the kind that gets you somewhere, that's about mastering these 5 elements. It's kind of rare when you think about it.
It really is. It makes you think about like those people we all know, the ones who've done amazing things. I bet they weren't just being stubborn. They were using these elements without even realizing it, maybe.
It's a good point. It's like a new way to look at success, right? It's not just luck or even just talent. It's something we can actually work on by building up these skills.
Now, that is a really cool thought to end on. It means we can all cultivate that right kind of stubbornness. It's not something you're just born with.
Exactly.
So, to wrap things up, next time we're feeling stuck or we see someone else hitting a wall, let's remember these 5 elements: energy, imagination, resilience, good judgment, and that clear focus on the goal. Maybe we can all be a little more productively persistent, right,
Maybe I
Vaughn?
said it better myself.